Almost all drivers have a few stories that simply cannot be explained. Now let's explore 5 of the spookiest occurrences as related by some long-haul truck drivers. Number 5. The Suspicious Roadkill. This story comes from a Pride transport driver. I was driving through Montana headed east and my company had miscalculated my mileage, so I requested an emergency fuel up. I got a response with the nearest gas station that I could get approved at. It wasn't exactly close, so I turned off the main highway and headed toward my stop. It's pitch black. There's no moon, no city light, and I haven't seen any headlights for about an hour. I'm cruising down the highway and I see something in the middle of the road at the furthest extent of my headlights, so I slow down, naturally as I approach it. When I come to pass it, I get one good glance at it and slam on my brakes as I pass right in the middle of the highway. All I could think was, what did I just see? So I back up, looking in the mirror until I see it. It's a red silhouette in my brake lights. I pull my brakes, put on my jacket and grab my flashlight and hop out. I walk to the back of my trailer, I put my light on it, and there it was. Headless, skinless, mangled corpse. I froze and my jaw dropped. I didn't know what I was looking at. I just stood there, in the middle of the highway, in the cold, stagnant air. The only sound is the hum of my truck 50 feet back. Watching this steam rise from this pile of meat, there was no fur, there was no clothing, just a fully intact ribcage with a mess of other miscellaneous bones attached by ligaments. I debated calling the police as the ribcage looked big enough for someone my size, but I looked at my phone and had 0 cell service. The nearest town was about 50 miles out. When I put my phone away, I flashed my light around, and standing at the end of the road were a handful of coyotes, staring at me. Then they started coming through the fence and trotting my direction. I figure this is the part where I get back in the truck before I get into a situation. So I did, and continued on my way. I still to this day do not know if it was human or not. Whatever it was, and whatever had happened, I was almost a witness of. I convinced myself that it was more than likely a deer and was hit by another truck like my own at highway speeds. That would definitely do significant damage, but in retrospect, I've never seen roadkill missing his flesh before. Number 4. Ghost at a wait station. My dad was a trucker for many years. One time he told me he'd stopped at a mandatory wait station somewhere at night that was refurbished from an old train station. My dad parked the truck and got out, noticed that someone was walking along the train tracks with a light. It was really late, so my dad called out and asked if he was okay. The man just kept walking. My dad said he had a lantern in his hand. My dad called out again and the man never turned around. He went into the office and told them that some drunk is walking the tracks, and the guy behind the desk nonchalantly says, "Yeah, was it this guy?" and points to an old picture on the wall. It was a picture of all the rail yard guys from over 70 years before. Sure enough, my dad had seen one of the guys in the photo. Apparently, a lot of people have seen whatever that was and come in asking questions. Number 3. Disappearing soldier. My first couple years, I was a night driver, so it was hard to see things sometimes. But the one in PA was me trying to follow a flatbedder who was hauling serious butt through the mountains. At one point I start to fall back because I can feel the van starting to lean. It wasn't long after that I reached down to take a swig of my handy monster. I look up, and there's a guy standing off to the shoulder, just outside the tree line, wearing what appeared to be some type of soldier's uniform. Looked like Revolutionary era. He had a musket as well. As I approach, I can see him staring right at me, and then he starts walking back into the tree line, looking at me. Before he manages to make it through the trees, he disappears, like literally vanishes in thin air. I had my windows down, and the air in the area got real cold. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. I had a really sad feeling come over me for a while afterwards. Needless to say, I didn't stop for the rest of my shift. Number 2. The Man in Black. My boyfriend is a truck driver who routinely does midnight runs. Oddly enough, I asked him this question myself a few days ago. He told me that one night he was getting ready to park in a lot next to a truck stop. He said it looked like there were no lights, no cars, no signs of anyone, but he said screw it. He was tired. He woke up the next morning, parked on the side of the road, with 3 highway patrol vehicles behind him. He was about 15 miles away from the truck stop he parked at. Thing is, he was sleeping in his sleeper the whole night. He has no idea how he got on the side of the road, and logic says someone tried stealing the truck and succeeded. And the police convinced him this happened as they saw a man in a black jumpsuit running away from his truck into a nearby field. Even then, he still feels uneasy about the whole situation. Apparently, the doors were still locked from the inside, and there was no real sign of anyone trying to break in. Number 1. The Ghost Girl. Missouri. I stopped at an off-ramp to stretch my legs and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out where giggles and says, "Hi, mister." My initial reaction was, "What is a little kid doing out here at this time?" So I talk back and say hi. She then responds with, "Mommy says you'll be okay, don't worry." Now utterly confused, I ask her what she means. She gives no response. Then suddenly, I feel like somebody is standing next to me. Doesn't feel negative or bad, just feels like somebody is right there next to me. Since it didn't have a negative vibe to it, I just finished my cigarette and left. Later on down the road, I realized that I forgot to fuel up at my last stop. When the warning light came on, so I scrambled to look at my GPS and find the nearest truck stop. I find one and set the course. As I roll up to the truck stop, my truck starts sputtering and I barely make it to the fuel line before the truck starts dying. I ran out of fuel right as I got on the fuel line. It wasn't until I was fueling that it occurred to me, what the hell happened at my last stop?